Hey morning class, this is Miss Shu. This video is for anyone who was here on Wednesday for our skill building day who wanted to review the independent practice activity that we didn't get to review together in class. Okay, so I'm going to read the article out loud and then I'm going to go question by question and explain the reasoning behind the correct answer. So the directions say to read the article, then answer questions 1 through 4. The title of the article is Longer School Day, Expanded Learning Time, Pros and Cons by Bethany Bray, the Andover Townsman. Arguments in favor. More time to cover the curriculum. I'm always hearing from teachers that there's not enough time, Superintendent Claudia Bach said. We really need more time to do the academic things, not just extracurricular. The extra time allotted with ELT, Expanded Learning Time, would allow teachers to expand current lessons, introduce special projects, provide new enrichment, and have time for more teacher workshops and development, supporters say. If you look at the curriculum, you say, oh my gosh, how can a teacher possibly get this done? ELT will allow us to do so much more for all our kids, said Brad Heim, a High Plain elementary parent. There's always room for improvement, and we have the luxury of being out front and being able to decide how we want to do it. Provide students global 21st century skills. Andover is looking at 21st century skills like cultural awareness, communication skills. And you'll actually notice that there's a footnote, which means a little number next to where it says 21st century skills. And a footnote is like a note at the bottom of a text that tells you actually what that word means or tells you a little bit more information about it. So if I go to the bottom and look at the number 1, where it says 21st century skills again in bold, it says, it means the skills students need to succeed in a highly technological workplace. Okay? So let me go back to reading. Andover's looking at 21st century skills like cultural awareness, communication skills. For Andover, it's making education all it can be. The big vision is that the world is changing, education is changing, and how can the schools meet the needs of the children and society, said Lisa Glickstein, grant coordinator for the district. Kids are doing reading and math that we didn't do at their age. But Glickstein added, parents are justifiably concerned. We're still figuring out if this grant program is right for Andover. State money is growing. Although ELT grants guarantee money for only 1 year, school districts can reapply year after year, and preference is given to districts that have ELT programs, Glickstein said. ELT funding has increased substantially in the 3 years it's been offered by the state, Heim said. What started as $500,000 has increased to $13 million this year, and Governor Deval Patrick and Senator Edward Kennedy are in favor of ELT, he said. With such tremendous support from our legislature, even in these economic times, ELT funding is being increased, Heim said. It's being funded because it works. Arguments against. If it ain't broke, why fix it? Andover is already one of the top districts in the state. In the past, ELT grants have helped underperforming districts such as Boston and Worcester with low state test scores and high dropout rates, problems Andover does not have. Only 1 year of funding guaranteed. As the political atmosphere changes, there's no promise of long-term funding, said Karen Liu, a High Plain elementary parent. Realistically, we cannot support this kind of budget long-term, and it's almost practically a certainty that funding would be dropped eventually. Lisa Glickstein, grant coordinator for Andover, said, it is a legitimate concern that the grant will go away. There really is no way that the town budget would be able to support that amount of time in a long-term way. Takes time away from families. Bancroft Elementary mother Dawn Kalinowski who also teaches at Pentucket Regional High School, believes ELT could eliminate the positive effect of parental involvement. We may be taking away the very thing that makes Andover such a great district, she said. She switched careers from engineering to teaching to have more time with her kids. Being able to put her kids on the bus in the morning is priceless, she said. Also, Andover parents, including Kalinowski herself, provide very specific extracurricular activities and lessons tailored to their children. School districts can't provide something each youth likes. So we'll start with question 1, although most people in class did get this right. So question 1 asks, based on paragraphs 1 through 7, which statement best describes the evidence used to support one claim in favor of adding expanded learning time? So in case I forgot what I just read, I already have 2 really important clues about where I'm supposed to look. Right? It tells me based on paragraphs 1 through 7, and it says that we're talking about the argument for adding expanded learning time. So these are the pros of the longer school day, or the arguments in favor. So I'm looking on the left-hand side on page 184. So if I go answer by answer, letter A, Andover schools are already top performers in the state. Well, if they're already top performers, they wouldn't need the longer school day. So that doesn't sound like it's evidence in support of adding extra learning time. So I'm going to cross out A. B, funding for longer school days is only guaranteed for 1 year. Again, that sounds like a con. That sounds like why we shouldn't add it, because we don't know if the funding is going to last for the next year. So the answer is probably not B. C, some are convinced that ELT will encourage positive parental involvement. Okay, so maybe it's C, because that is about how the extra learning time can be a positive thing by adding more parent involvement. So it might be C, but let me check out D. D, more time is needed for current academic lessons and special projects. Okay. So if I look at paragraphs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which, the subheaders are saying is about more time to cover the curriculum, provide students global 21st century skills, and state money is growing, I don't see anything about positive parental involvement in these paragraphs. What I do see is evidence about more time for covering the curriculum, right? More time for learning, more time for skill building in class. So, like most of you said, D is the strongest answer, right? D is saying that in paragraphs 1 through 7, the evidence is mostly about how adding learning time will create more time for more school-based learning, more special projects. So I'm going to say D is the correct answer here. So let's move on to question number 2. Question 2 asks, why does the article include the claim that state funding for expanded learning time, ELT, has increased? And the question says that we can look in paragraph 7 for the answer. So before I even answer question 2, I want to go back and reread paragraph number 7. So when I look at paragraph number 7, I notice that we're still in the arguments in favor. We're still talking about the good things about making the school day longer. And I notice that we are in the subheader that says state money is growing. Okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and read paragraph number 7. ELT funding has increased substantially in the 3 years it's been offered by the state, Heim said. What started as $500,000 has increased to $13 million this year, and Governor Deval Patrick and Senator Edward Kennedy are in favor of ELT, he said. So let me just figure out what the main idea of this paragraph is about, right? It's talking about how funding for ELT, which we learned earlier means expanded learning time or a longer school day, that funding is increasing, okay? And even if I don't know what funding means, I see in the next sentence that what started as $500,000 has increased to $13 million this year, okay? So the money is going up. That makes me think that funding probably means money. The money is going up. And the governor and a senator are in favor of it. So this makes me think that the money is coming from the government or from the state, okay? So let me come back to question number 2. Again, it says, why does the article include the claim that state funding for expanded learning time has increased, okay? Remember, this activity is all about learning to evaluate arguments, learning to judge arguments, right? Do they have enough reasons and evidence to convince you? And I know that this argument, this part of the article, is about why there should be longer school days, okay? So let me go answer by answer. Letter A, it proves that starting an ELT program is a good way for Andover to raise money. Paragraph 7 didn't really talk about fundraisers, so I don't really think that A is the right answer. B, it suggests that many ELT programs are being started, so Andover should add one. Paragraph 7, it also doesn't really talk about other schools that are starting these programs, and it doesn't really say anything about why Andover should add one in this paragraph. It's really just talking about the fact that the money is going up. So, I don't know, maybe, it is talking about, why the longer school day is good, but I don't know if this is the strongest answer. What about C? It shows that ELT is too expensive a program for Andover to fund on its own. Well, that doesn't sound right, because it's not saying the money is going up like it's getting more expensive for Andover to do it. It's saying the money is going up like the government, the state, is giving more money to the schools who are doing it. So I don't think it's about ELT being too expensive, right? Because that wouldn't even be an argument for the longer school day. That would be an argument against. So C is definitely not right. Now let me check out D. It supports the idea that state funding for Andover's ELT program will not run out. That to me makes the most sense, because it's saying the money keeps going up. There's more and more money, right? The first sentence was even that, it's increased substantially in the 3 years that this program has been offered, okay? So the money can't run out if there's more and more money, right? If the money's not going to run out, that sounds like a pretty solid claim for why we should have a longer school day, because we don't need to worry about the money issue. So I think D is the best answer here. So the final multiple choice question is number 3. It says, which best summarizes the argument against expanded learning time in paragraphs 9 through 15? So to answer this question, I know that I'm only looking at paragraphs 9 through 15, which are all of the paragraphs against making the school day longer, okay? So if I'm quickly looking at answers A, B, C, D, if I just skim over them, I notice that all of them are relevant to being against more learning time, right? A is like, Andover should not begin ELT. B says there's no point in starting ELT. C says Andover doesn't have these problems. And D says, adding extra time is going to mean less parent time. Students' performance might suffer. So I can't get rid of any of these answers just yet. Thinking about, are any of these actually about being in favor of the learning time? No, these are all about being against the extra learning time. So I think I actually need to go back and skim over paragraphs 9 through 15 first so I can pick the best answer. So since I'm looking for the summary of the arguments against expanding the school day, I might be able to just look at the subheaders, right? Because the subheaders kind of tell you the main idea of each section, and a summary is all of the main ideas, all of the most important ideas in a text, okay? So header 1 is, if it ain't broke, why fix it, right? This section, if you read it, it's all about how expanded learning time is really helpful for schools that have low state test scores. They have high dropout rates. Kids don't really do well in these schools. They don't really, finish school. But this school, Andover, doesn't really have that problem. So maybe expanded learning time isn't, why have a solution for a problem that doesn't even really exist? Okay, subheader 2 says only 1 year of funding guaranteed. That one's pretty obvious. There's just not enough money to keep the program going. And subheader 3 says takes time away from families, right? That if you're in school longer, you're going to have less time at home with your parents and with your families, and that can, be hurtful to you as a youth. Okay, so these are the big ideas in section 3. So now that I've refreshed myself, I think I'm ready to actually go back to question 3 and look at my possible answers. So which of the following answers best summarizes the argument against the longer school day? Let's look at A. Andover should not begin ELT because Andover is a high-performing district. The funding might run out, and ELT takes time away from families. Actually, that sounds pretty good. Those are all 3 of the main points that the subheaders talked about. But because I'm a good, test taker and a good strategist, I'm going to check the other answers just in case. But already, I feel pretty good about answer A. B, there's no point in starting ELT in Andover because grant money to fund it might run out after a single year and the town could not pay for it. Well, that was one of the 3 big ideas in this section, but it's asking me to summarize it. So I need all of the big ideas. So B doesn't seem as good to me. C says ELT is most useful in districts where test scores are low and dropout rates are high, but Andover does not have these problems. Again, that's one of the big 3 ideas, but it doesn't summarize all 3 ideas. And D says adding extra time to the school day would allow less time for parents to help their own children, so students' performance might actually suffer from ELT. Again, that's one of the 3 big ideas. It's not all of the big ideas. So for question number 3, A is definitely the best answer that best summarizes the argument against expanding learning time. Last but not least, let's look at the short response question. So it says, how does the author of Longer School Day, Expanded Learning Time Pros and Cons show that future funding of an ELT program in Andover is uncertain? Use 2 details from the article to support your response. So remember, this skill is all about evaluating, all about judging someone's argument. Do the claims make sense? Do they have enough strong reasons and evidence to support their claims? Okay? So what this question is specifically asking me is, how do they show that the future funding of this program, of this longer school day program, is uncertain? Okay? They are asking what reasons or what evidence, really what evidence are they giving that shows that there might not be all this money for longer school days in the future, okay? And then it's really, really key. The question is also telling me that I need to use 2 details from the article to support your response. Not 1, not some, 2. Not 3, although I could go above and beyond, but 2 for sure. Okay? So I'm going to give you guys one example that I wrote, but As long as you are answering this question and using those two details, there are many different ways that you could write this, okay? So this is just one possible answer to this question. So I wrote, in both sections of the article, the author notes that future funding of ELT is uncertain. She writes, quote, ELT grants guarantee money for only 1 year, end quote. State funds are increasing, but you have to reapply for grants every year. She also quotes a parent who says, quote, there's no promise of long-term funding, end quote. The author is clearly showing funding is a big issue, okay? So I talked about how the author shows that this funding is up in the air, right? That it's not certain there will be enough money in the future. I talked about what evidence she gave to support this idea in her argument. And I made sure to follow the instructions and use two details. I used two pieces of textual evidence to support my answer. Okay? So I hope that for those of you who took the time to watch this, that this has helped you understand why these answers are the correct answers for the multiple choice, or how to successfully complete the short response question. If you have any questions, you can comment them on Google Classroom, and I will answer them as best as I can, okay? I will see you guys tomorrow.